From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, episode 10. My name's James. I'll do the plugs really quickly and we'll get through them. So Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, the podcast. You can find on Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast or derivatives thereof. Just search Don Muraco, you'll find him. And on dontherockmuraco.com for all your signed merchandise and stuff like that. So normally what we're doing in Ask Muraco Anything, an AMA part 2, where you send in questions and Don answers them as best he can. But just before we do, just seconds before we came on air, we just learned that Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff has just passed away. So to throw to you, Don, I suppose memories of Paul.
Hell of an athlete, good guy. We pretty much rode that whole 80s out there in the WWF. As it was, he got that spot with Piper for the first WrestleMania, and excellent, great performer, in and out of the ring, talking, gentlemen. He saved all his money, saved his money, Christian and everything else, and I guess he went back to his hometown in Georgia, and somebody had conned him into putting up a bowling alley, opening a bowling alley in some rural town out of Atlanta. I think he lived outside of it, just outside of Atlanta, in one of the suburb type city. And that I guess his friends were less than friends. His friends were less than friends, and he lost. I guess he lost everything, his business there. That's how he got back into the Atlanta office, training wrestlers, and I guess he trained for Vince as well. I'm not sure after a while, but boy, sometimes wrestlers get out of their depth, and have money and want to invest it. You have to be careful. Where you want, regarding not only wrestlers alone, but anybody with finances, Willie Nelson. Look how many times has he been threatened with jail, missing taxes and stuff. Yeah, he was a good, couple stories, about him in fights with Tony Atlas or Van Vader. Atlas denies it. I heard a retort by Tony on that Boston show he does. I think he does like a weekly show from Boston. And he says told Brian Blair to come on and you're not telling the truth. That's their business. Had nothing to do with me. But they had a fight with, and then he had a fight with Vader in Atlanta. He had his shower shoes on and kicked him so many times his feet hurt. That was what I got out of that. But he was a great athlete. Diet, workout, train, on the road performer, and an all around nice guy. Real nice guy.
Piper always used to say that he used to call him Oscar the Grouch, or Oscar. Was that something everyone called him?
Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't the brightest star, brightest light that grew, but he wasn't he was serious. Yeah, a grouch, but he was serious, more serious about everything than grouchy. He was a serious. And then he went to religion and got more serious.
Yeah, even more serious. One more thing I've got to ask is I don't know for some reason, but do you remember the injury that happened to his neck that ended up making his arm shrink or deteriorate?
It was ongoing for a long time. I don't know. Evidently somebody's pile driver or something. That's usually the cause. Or land on it. And something, he had a pinched nerve in his neck. I remember he used to sit in the locker room with the weights, a weight that would stretch his neck away from, trying to extend the nerve and everything else. But inevitably that failed. So I know it was a developing injury that slowly developed worse and worse as time went by.
Yeah, he didn't get adjusted by Harley Race or Ultimate Warrior or anything, and that was the cause.
No, as bad as his neck was, it might have Warrior wouldn't have helped him. Who knows? Put him right out there. Oh God.
But yeah, he's and you were sort of the substitute, weren't you, at WrestleMania 1 in case... I know Piper didn't want to lose, but you were sort of the third in line, in case one either Paul.
That's what they told me. Yeah, that's what. That's the line George Scott fed me. So it's. I made it up. I didn't hurt, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. So. Rest in peace, Paul Orndorff, I suppose, then. But yeah, that's a bit of a shock. 71, I believe. I'm just having a look
Football
at
player, New Orleans Saints. Went to the University of Tampa, out of the University of Tampa. They had a bunch of guys. Matuzak, I'm sure English people aren't. Matuzak and Ron Michelotcha. Freddie Solomon ended up a wide receiver for 49ers, the Super Bowl teams. Like I said, Matuzak, Ron Michelotcha, Dick Slater, all those guys, all those guys on that team, all Tampa boys.
The old Tampa boys. Right, so we will move on. We will try and sort of lift the mood a little bit then. And the first question, actually, I've pre-written something, so we will do our best to ask your questions. So I've got nearly 200 questions to burn through here. And certain questions won't get asked, especially if, for two reasons. One, actually 3 reasons. One, if it's rubbish. Two, if you're asking a question about someone maybe like Tito Santana, who we will probably do in an upcoming episode as a deep dive and dedicate an entire show to them. Or three, if a question's already been answered. So if it's already been answered, then just go through the archives and, have a look through. But the first question I will ask you is actually from referee Mike Chioda, who I interviewed last week, and I mentioned to him, I do a podcast with Don. Have you got any memories? And he said, yes, I've got one memory of him ripping the door off a taxi cab. Do you remember what the story was there?
No, I was trying to think. Where was it?
It may have been in Europe, the ill-fated 1988 European tour.
Oh. No, it wouldn't have been in Europe. I don't know. I don't. I remember I pushed on a few pretty hard. I don't remember actually ripping the door off, but.
Well, it's a good story to have a legend, the legend attached to you.
Sure, I ripped it off with one arm, one hand. Ripped it off with my teeth. Took a big bite out of the window and just ripped it off. I know. I'm probably too drunk to remember. Or it's just too good a story to let pass. Definitely. Right, so the first question is, the second question, is from Joe Han. There's a video online where it looks like Dynamite suplexed the Magnificent One on the concrete floor in Japan. My question is, was there padding on the floor in Japan in those days, and was it you in the video, and how the heck are you still walking after taking bumps like that? Well, first answer, I'm not still walking. I don't think that was me on the floor in Japan. I don't remember a lot of things, but that would have been one of my last tours to Japan, and I never I don't remember with it could have been. It couldn't have been me. It could have been. I think I was under a mask with Tenru, but we were with Baba, so I think I was just Morocco. So yeah, I would have had no cause to have been suplexed by Dynamite.
No. Did you ever take any maybe ill-fated bumps on the concrete without mats at the time?
Probably, everybody did. It wasn't. It was, it wasn't. They didn't always have mats there for the longest time. Well, the WWF is the only place that's, I guess every place else now. But WWF started all that, the barriers and the mats and all the other stuff, So I'm sure there are lots of times I hit the floor, or hit a table, or hit a chair, or something that, concrete was there or something long before. I did wrestle for 10 years before I went to New York, so I'm sure there was a lot of tables, cement floors and stuff that I hit.
Next question, Doc the Metal Freak. In your opinion, why do you think Dino Bravo never held any WWF championship?
I don't know. They pretty much had their characters. I guess by the time, he was probably like myself, a dying breed, an old work. They had, warriors, everybody had a character, a honky tonk man, a hillbilly, a bulldog, animal steel. He probably, possibly, that's why. He was a good work. He was a huge card in Montreal, that territory up there. And we mentioned earlier that that's why he never wrestled Hulk. Remember, we were in the Montreal Forum one night. He was a big hockey fan. And we got this up here. It's just the Temple of Hockey. They won, back in their days, they won every Stanley Cup there was. That Montreal was just, they owned the Stanley Cup. And then, obviously they've fallen out. At the time, he was so proud. He was such an hockey guy.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get the opportunity to ask about this guy again, but Frenchie Martin. Do you have any stories about Frenchie Martin?
He was around. He worked. He ended up managing, didn't he?
He managed Dino. Yeah.
Yeah, he ended up managing Dino. So he lasted quite a while. He came in. He must have been part of the Montreal deal with the Montreal office, and with the Rougeaus and Dino and whoever else. Martel was in long before that. Martel was, he was an independent worker from Quebec, but he must have apparently he was part of the Montreal connection with that promotion they had up there. And they must have liked him, so they brought him down with the Rougeaus and Dino and whoever else was around. He was a good hand. He was around, preliminary guy. Didn't make a real big stir, but fine hand.
Did you ever hear about the prank rib? I'll try not to give too much away so you can say it, but he used to have a suitcase that he would open at airports. Do you remember that story at all? Or?
No.
Well, apparently he used to have a suitcase full of dildos that he would open at the wrong time in an airport, and then just dildos would spill all over the place, just to amuse himself, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah. I missed that. I never enjoyed that moment.
Maybe that was a Montreal thing. Then I'll move swiftly on. So the next man is Juan Under. Dear Mr. Muraco, I wanted to know your thoughts on the most famous WWF writer, Vince Russo. Did you watch late 90s WWF, and how edgy did you think it was?
Never. I met him, shook his hand once. Never worked with him, never worked for him. I'm trying to think of something good somebody ever said about him, but I can't recall that anybody has ever had anything worthwhile to say about the man. I don't know him. Like I said, I had just a handshake one time and a hello is as much as I know. I know a couple of the ideas that what the brawl to end it all, or the one where you got the Billy Jack or Bobby Jack, whatever that guy knocked
Bart
out.
Gunn, I love that one.
But,
Everyone else hated it. I loved it.
Knocked him out 3 times in 45 seconds. Jesus Christ. He must have had some heat. They set him with they put him in with the Butterbean. Butterbean was a ringer. And just beat the hell out of him. I watched it over again a couple of times. It's like he knocked him out 3 times in a little over, give or take 45 seconds. And I guess the poor guy, he had no. I saw him come back on one of those dark sides or something. He had no, he had no clue what was going to, he was going into the gates of hell there.
Yeah, people thought Bart Gunn was going to win as well. It's like he had a couple of tough mans under his belt, and that was it. And Butterbean, even though he was a bit of a gimmick boxer, was a pro boxer.
I heard that that setup was due to the fact that he hurt Steve Williams, and Steve Williams had a bad knee, and in one of the lead up bouts, the elimination bouts, he took advantage of and Steve didn't know about. I don't know whether that's true or not. Steve has passed on, so he wouldn't know have any input into it. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll move on to the next one then. Here's someone you definitely do know, because I believe you wrestled him a few times. This is by Phil Cole. What did he think of Mil Mascaras? He only worked with him a couple of times. They had a match at the Meadowlands on Bruno's farewell match in 1981. Thoughts on Mil and how that match went? Thank you.
Pretty much the way all matches go with Mil, you just kind of, you work to do his. Well, he was one of those characters, but it was an office. It was an office deal. That his character morphed into a type of Ultimate Warrior. One of those Macho Man, one of those Marvel comic characters turned up, because that's what he came in from Mexico as. He was a movie star, and he was their wrestler there, and he did a lot of their high moves, their high flying moves, and if you could keep up with them, and you knew how to work with them, you could get it done and get through the match. But you're never going to get any big heat or anything. He wouldn't. He would sell a little bit, and then the Mexican style, and then he would be right back up, into a hole or into some type of move. So you just had you just had to know what game you were playing when you were working with him. He was you weren't. Well, I imagine he could probably take care of himself if he had to. I'm sure in every place he went to, there were guys that tested him, but I'm sure most of the territories like LaBelle's or Vince McMahon Sr. at the time, or whoever, they probably handpicked his opponent, knowing somebody that would work for him, somebody that would put him over.
Was he a big deal in New York? So I know he was sort of like in the border states, as you'd probably expect. But when Mil Mascaras came in, did you see a sea of Mexicans in the audience coming to see him?
But he was popular from the television. I don't know if he would draw, but the Latino fan base, being Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever ethnicity they were, he was a legendary figure for the Latin people out of Mexico. He was I guess El Santo was before him and is considered a higher, greater than him. But I don't know. He was the biggest thing out of Mexico in my time and around.
Two more questions just on Mill. Is one, did you ever see him with his mask off? And two, did you ever see him not sucking his gut in?
Oh, he was pretty. Yeah, he was always pumping. His name was Aaron. I forget what his last name was. Obviously Spanish name. His name was Aaron. He would walk around. Well, we were up in like in the big cities and stuff. He always had his mask on. But I used to hang around with Angelo Mosca. And Mosca was always a rascal and a bully. And so when we were up in Maine or New Hampshire or outside, one of these outside towns, he'd have his mask on and be walking, and Mosca would go, "Hey, Neil, Moscaris, Neil, what are you doing? What's going on?" And then other times when he'd be walking with his mask on, hey, Aaron, he'd start calling him Aaron. And then Moscaris never sold it that much, but you could tell he was annoyed by it. But yeah, when he had his mask on, Moscaris would call him Neil. Neil Moscaris. What'd you have for lunch? Big ball breaker, Angie.
I'll go on then and ask the next question. This is from Jason Adair. He writes, I got a non-wrestling question, and feel free, if you've got a non-wrestling question for Don, please feel free to throw one in. Any good surf stories? I have lived my whole life living in Kentucky, and I've always wanted to surf, but probably won't ever get a chance to try it. But I love hearing stories about it. So any good surfing stories?
My God. Those are usually days or something, I've seen a lot. Greg Knoll, one of the big wave legends, just passed away last week. He was 84, I believe. Lived a good life, had a surfboard company. He's the guy in all the movies and stuff that had those convict shorts on, the black and white shorts. And you see him in all the. He's one of the original guys that paddled out, the Californians that paddled out to Waimea Bay back in the day. That when they were just surfing Wakaha was the big wave, and they long before jet skis or boats and a lot of these guys just paddled out into just a unknowing sea. I mean, they read. To be in the ocean and stuff, you read directions, the winds, the channel, the currents, the direction of the swell. You all those things, play into part more and more as time goes by. Back in those days, those guys were just looking. I guess Ricky Gregg was one of them. He passed away a long time ago, but he was like an oceanographer, a doctor, and he had some. He would have the surf maps, like my friend Jimmy Blears. Lord Blears, he would have the topographical maps, and I highlight the low pressure zones and the wind areas and stuff like that. So as surface, it's that's the old time surfing back here, and now the North Shore is like a parking lot. On the weekend.
I'll fill in a couple more then. So you've said to me before, like sometimes it's like life or death. When you go and you don't know if you're going to come back out again. What's the sort of closest you came to a bit of disaster and tallest waves, let's say?
Oh, several times. Just getting caught inside. Chasing a big wave and not getting it. And so when you're off, then you look around and there's a bigger wave in back of you coming down right on top of you. Those are the times you like to cry, but it wouldn't help. It just says, I'll never, if I get out of this, I'll never come out. I'll never do this again. And I don't know how many times I swore that and how many times I broke that vow. I'll never. And if I come up from this wall, if I come up under being on this way, I'll never come out and I'll never do this again.
When I think
5 minutes later.
when I think of surfing in the Pacific Ocean, I think sharks. Is that just me? As like a complete no idea what I'm talking about, or do you actually see sharks fairly regularly?
Wow, not about regular, but there's um, it's not it's their ocean too. It's not like out here on the North Shore in the summertime. Their feeding moves in closer to the shore, to the beach. So they spot, occasionally they'll spot a small one or even a tiger coming through near because the hunting ground, their fishing area has been moved in, and things move in. When the winter starts, you have big waves out, pretty much constantly, on a daily basis, 3-4 days, just some big surf and some monstrous surf, and then good surf. But you find that human beings are the only ones that put themselves in that predicament. Yeah, fish, sharks, turtles, they're one of the greatest not greatest, but I was by myself right down the road here at Camiland out in the morning. I had a big board. It was really small, but it was kind of lumpy and it was really clean. And I got this wave from way outside. I was coming by, and then the chop backwash came, and the wave kind of doubled in size, and it went up, and it was water was crystal clear. And then as it went up, there was a turtle that had been in the water, and the turtle was just poised in the face of the wave. And then, it's just if you had a camera, it's one of those memories you snap, that sticks with you forever. The turtle up like that in full length, just the whole length of the wave, and it wasn't a big wave; it just happened to bounce up at the time. Just the ocean's a great place.
With your experience over the decades doing surfing and everything, ecologically speaking, are there just so many more jellyfish than there used to be? Because there are around here.
We have from 6 to 9 days after a full moon, and it's normally on the other side of the island where I live on the South Shore, and parts of the west and east as well, and occasionally I suppose out here, but they have the Portuguese man-o-war and the jellyfish lay their eggs. So they have all these egg clusters and man-o-wars and everything else for 3 days, 3.5, 4 days after 6 days. They charge it much, 6.5 days after a full moon. So that's if there's an increase or something, I don't know. It just never seemed to go away, and there's so many of them. God.
Are there more over the decades than there used to be in the 60s?
And I don't know. First time I really came across them was up in Malibu, up in Southern California, when I was going to college out there, and they'd be jellyfish all over the place. And then as I went up the coast and moved to Santa Cruz and all along the West Coast, there were lots of jellyfish. So
right.
Whether there's more or less, no, I don't know.
I think in deep oceans there are, but that's global warming and the effects of that. But I shall move on, and I will ask this question from a almost unpronounceable name of Ibzan Arroyo. I'm fighting without having glasses on because people kept calling me Harry Potter, so I'm really struggling here. This chap says, I live in Atlantic City, so what did he do for the entire week of WrestleMania 4? Did you shop on the boardwalk, play the casinos, walk the beach like you do back home?
Oh, yeah. Go dance with the dancing girls, take saunas, massages. We were working every night before. You're on the road. What are you talking about? Walk on the beach, visit the hotel. No. You came in, possibly you're off the night before because WrestleMania was a big deal. Possibly you were in the town. Most likely you're in a town somewhere before that. where you're making arrangements to, to come to get there early, early enough to sit around and do interviews, to sit there and do the promos before the show, because everybody's got some kind of, and everybody's got a time slot, and they arrange you, and then you just. I remember we were in a hotel. I was like, who's? And this lady was on the. She'd come from I think it was Gloria Estefan. She was on. They were on the. They were on the marquee that night at the hotel we were at. As I'm standing with friends of ours, and we're going up to our room, getting our room in the hotel for WrestleMania. I said, "Oh yeah, Gloria Esteban," and she was Miami Sun Machine at the time. And I said, "Yeah, they're here." I said, "She's really good." I said, "Yeah, are you gonna go see her?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "This is the closest I'll ever get to." She's standing right next to me in the elevator. And I said, "Vince has got work for us all night and all morning long." I said, "This is the closest I'll ever be." Little did I know it was.
What's your favourite Gloria Estefan tunes? Is it Dr. Beat, or is it The Rhythm's Gonna Get You?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I'll ask the next one then. So, Franklin Gordon. Hi, Don. You are awesome. One of the greatest heels he spelt heels with an A, of 80s WWF. I would love to know, at what point did they approach you about joining the Piper Adonis Heat angle, I suppose? It sounds like you guys were really close with them and with Orton. Was it common back then to take the guys who were mostly friendly and have them work together? Also, did you know right when that angle began that they would have you turn babyface? As a rooter for heels, I love it that Orton never had to turn babyface. And how long had it been by that point since you had wrestled as a babyface? That's a lot of questions. First one we'll say is, when did you know you were going to get involved in Adrian Adonis versus Roddy Piper in the flower shop and the pit and everything?
That night when they were laying the flower shop and the flower shop out, I don't know why. I guess I was the host. I was the guest. I remember I probably started as Adrian's guest on the show, and I don't remember the sequence actually. And Piper came down, and Piper came in, and they were going back and forth. I don't know. Tell you the truth, I don't remember exactly.
No, I'll tell you what. One day I'll replay the entire thing and we'll watch it. But oh god, I'll move on to the next one. We're on page 2. Right, this one from Juan and Steph Rosales. Your stand-up routine with Fuji on TNT was great, but when Fuji said, "How about some tropical stuff instead of topical?" I lost it. You almost laughed too. How hard was it to keep a straight face? He clearly misread his cue card.
It was hard. It was the straight face was nothing. It was keeping up with the timing with the running of the prompter. They would. And it just showed what a good reader I am.
Yeah.
I am what a speed reader. They just ran that prompter. All the things you're recurring to me are. I've gone back. I think I've seen it once, in the passing that I did, maybe twice, since I've done the thing, and at times I remember little pieces of it. But like I said, all I remember is. And Emilio Marcos lousy joke about shoes or something, That's as far as I go.
I know I asked this once before, but where did the jokes come from? Were they ripped off someone else's jokes from last week, or did
somebody wrote them? Yeah, somebody there just wrote them, and and just put them up.
Okay, and next question is... I don't know why I sang that. I was sort of filling time. Prairie Hawker. Don, I would like to ask you if you think many of the modern-day talents can actually survive a training camp like Vern Gagne's. Some of the stories I hear, especially about Vern's training camps, are brutal to say the least. How do you think young talent today would have fared in such an environment?
I think these guys do go through a hell week, don't they? I think these.
Wow.
I would think these trainers and stuff put them through. I don't know how how the wrestling schools go, but I know they try and work them out. I had a school down in Honolulu here. I had nothing to do with it. I was just trying to keep my foot, in the door, so to speak, with wrestling. And then, so I let this lady use my name for anything, and she put up and I did some promos for it. And I said, come in in shape. This isn't a health club. We're going to get you in shape. Come in shape. So, but I suppose that's their attitude when you first come in. They want you to be in condition, and it's pretty much, the trainer's going to do what they got old salty guys running the. They got salty guys running the. Everybody loves me today for some reason. They got salty guys running those camps. I think they're driving these kids pretty hard, as far as I know.
Well, give us maybe like a typical week in AWA Vern's training camp, because didn't you actually train some of the kids or wrestle with them at some point?
Well, I went down there with Robinson. I tagged along with Billy, and when I went down by myself, that was the happiest time they had, because we just did we just did regular wrestling. When they go in, they start with that Brunzell, Bruggers, Gagne, Cosgrove, Patera. There's another one. Anyway,
Steamboat.
Flair.
Yeah, Flair.
Flair. So they'd have first, they were big guys. Flair was 300 pounds. They'd have them run 2-3 miles at first. Then they'd get them up in the ring, and it's the 2, 3, 4, 500 squats with the push-ups and the calisthenics and the burpees. And then they usually had a guy like an old time, like these old guys like George Scarpello or Danny Hodge, or one of these guys that not a bodybuilder, not a tough looking guy at all. In fact, Joe's nicest guy in the world. But somebody like these guys would be just exhausted, well, not the Sheik, but they'd work out, and then they'd put guys as Stu Hart holes, and they just hook them and stretch them and have their way with them. Then plus you'd go through a series of bumps. You take Beal after Beal after Beal. You'd line up and go. It's like a football practice. They Beal, and backdrop, ball backdrop, and stuff like that. So then they wrestle and stuff. But when I showed up by myself, it was just cup calisthenics, workout, and then on to the matches.
Was Vern trying to run everybody off, like take the money and run them off, or was he actually trying to get them to work out as wrestlers because he was getting a piece of the contract?
Yeah, I think he was trying to develop talent. I mean, all the guys he had in there. Well, Jim, his son, and then Greg turned out to be a good hand. But Jim Brunzell was an athlete. Cosgrove, international wrestling star. Bobby Bruggers, ex-football player. Flair, a 300-pound football player. Ken Patera, ex-Olympian. So, I mean, he had a bunch of guys that I'm sure he could see, hopefully draw money down the line. That did, a lot of them did draw money down the line. And that he made back on each side of it. So, it was a win-win for him.
Right, next question. Lovely Lance Lumley asks, Jesse Ventura once said Tito Santana was the easiest to work with and was almost a night off when he wrestled Tito. Who was the easiest person Don wrestled? Was Don ever approached? And also, were you ever approached to write a book about your career? So
I have been several times. Yeah. Write a book. Everybody's got a book. I don't know. Organizing thoughts. I got a lot of podcasts out there. Should collect. Easiest to wrestle. I don't know if there's an easy, if a guy was easy to wrestle, you'd want a good match on him. Steamboat was easy. I mean, they're all easy, everybody at the where I was at my place, my position in professional wrestling, going through all the territories and stuff. I was in the upper I was in the upper echelon, upper tier of guys that drew money and performers and stuff. So I I rarely came across somebody that I didn't wasn't easy to work with. Now Lars Anderson, they brought him into Florida, and they wanted him to do a Johnny Valentine and work like Johnny Valentine. And there's one Johnny Valentine, there's one Snuka, one guy that could get, and Lars was good at it, but the people have moved on since then. The crowds, like now you just try and lay in a rear chin lock for 10, 15, 20 minutes, or lay in a hole for 10 minutes, you're going to get stoned. People are going to throw they're just going to crap at it. And they'd moved on I had all these mice myself, Rocky Johnson, Pedro. We were the three baby faces, and we were doing all these hour Broadways with Lars, and they were, he tried to assimilate his timing to be like a Valentine, and when he was, because Lars was a great worker. Don't get me wrong. Before he tried to transform into this Johnny Valentine character, but there was no timing. There was no comeback. There was no entertaining. The whole match was like pulling teeth, which I got to do in an hour, a couple minutes. But the whole match was, and so his timing wasn't that of Valentine, where you could, with Valentine, you boom, boom, punch and punch and punch, and slowly you knock a brick out of the wall, and he would, but you'd have to work for it, and he didn't have that type of timing. He didn't have that type of charisma to carry it out. That was that would suffice as a hard match I had. I mean, everybody else was. I worked with Morales. I worked with Rocky Johnson back, and I worked with all the Tito, Killer Bean. I worked with George Steele, and nobody. I didn't have any hard time. Coco Beware drop kicked me into the middle of next week one time off the top rope in Toronto. Gave me a concussion. Hit me so hard my head hit the mat. I had a headache for about 5-6 days. But aside, that was an accident, I think. I hope. But aside from that, there wasn't, where we were, there weren't hard matches. I wasn't a preliminary guy trying to make, maybe when I started, when I got into, I remember Bastien chewing me out one time, Red Bastien, because I'd been working with Fritz von Goring, was a good guy, good worker, and a big card back east. And I just couldn't gel with Fritz. And Shires was the promoter, and he was chewing me out. I said, I just can't drive with Fritz's style, his style. And Red Kim says, "Hey man, don't be talking about a guy who's not." And I didn't mean to be, but but I learned a good lesson from Red in that aspect. One time, he put me in my place, and I understood, that I was wrong. That I laid it off on somebody because I couldn't have. I wasn't able to create a good match out of it. And I was just blaming Fritter. But, there were no bad, there were no hard grab. But where I was at the last 10 or so years of my career, 15 years of my career, there were no hard matches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll go to the next question then. And Jason Hellenberg, memories of working with Dean Ho, and who was the best guy for coming up with finishes not named Eddie Graham?
Bill Watts was a good one. Dusty, they did a lot. Because they're all Florida based. Vince had some great ones. Vince up there, the Hebner brothers, the Hebner twins. They did a title on did somebody. They screwed somebody.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Saturday night's main event.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Well, they changed the brother. I thought that I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't know Dave had a twin brother. The boys are surprised themselves. A lot of them. What was it talking about now?
That was some of the most creative Finnish men, but also Dean Ho memories, because Dean Ho had the gym, didn't he, in Hawaii?
Yeah, started me out. Dean Ho, I got a chance to work with him when I went back to Shires. I was back with I don't know where I'd come back from, but I loved living in Santa Cruz, and Dean was the top babyface. I think he had the belt as well. So I worked with him, and I got to work with one of my mentors and spent a lot of time with him, and always did my best to make him crack up in the ring. Tried to make him laugh and goof around. He was easy too. He was fun. He was a good guy. Just passed away 2 or 3 months ago, several months ago. He was a great guy.
When was he active? And because I don't know very much about Dean Ho. I know he was in the WWF at one point, probably with Tony Garea. But what's sort of the career of Dean Ho?
He started wrestling here in Hawaii. He had the gym. All the wrestlers knew him. Then he went to Portland and Vancouver, British Columbia, and the Portland. I don't know if he worked the Portland territory a lot, but he was, it was good there. But he pretty much homesteaded in BC, and then for some reason he went down to San Francisco. Some reason he got booked. He went to New York, and he got the title. So he must have had a good run there. That tag team belt was a good one, except the tag team was always last, unless there was a cage match or a main event and the champion was going through an hour. Or somebody you're doing something at the end, the World Tag Team Champion was always the last match on the card. So that that was it is what it is. They were driving a lot, so he must have saved a lot of money from that. His couple of years in New York, and went back to BC, and I think he had an auto body shop or something at the end there. I think he had a couple of kids. I know he had a couple of kids here in Hawaii. And he left Hawaii. He had I think he was fooling around with young girls or something, and he had to get on the move. He got near a border. He was a good guy.
I'll go next one. And Trevor Hemberg, during Dark Side of the Ring episode on Snooker and Nancy, Tonga Kid intimated that you guys were all staying on the same floor at the same hotel in Allentown when you'd all be there for TV tapings. How often did you cross paths with Snooker or Pedro or any other faces you'd be working against in storylines? And how often did a fan or someone walk by that might have opened the door for a potential kayfabe breach?
Well, the hotel was all spread out. There wasn't any second floor. It was just Allentown, one of these, these hotels. You'd have to drive around to the back, and I don't know if there's any big secrets or anything. Everybody they had a saloon at the front there, where a lot of people would stop at the end and stuff. It wasn't. And a little diner up the top of the hill where you'd run and pick up food. So they weren't hassling. New York wasn't the type of territory that hassled, who you hung out. Well, obviously the Sheik and Duggan got busted together in Garden State Parkway, right? But they didn't, guys pretty much, looked out for themselves and tried not to make that kayfabe thing, go out of whack there. So nobody really hung out or stuff. Samoans had their crew, a bunch of people there, and they were always Kentucky Fried Chicken and barbecue and stuff going on. The guys would just be out in their corner. Would just be you'd get into Allentown, find the hotel, then go right to the Ag Hall and start doing interviews. And you stay there till, unless you got, you're on the first hour and that was it. But you'd stay there till, 10 o'clock or so at night. Then you did 3 individual hours. Then you'd jump in, you go to the hotel and grab from the diner up the street or someplace where you knew what, where you're going to eat. And the hotel, that's about it.
So I'll going to ask you 2 more questions because you've got to get to the dentist. So, Randy Cockfield, during the first Royal Rumble of 1988, I remember both you and Nikolai Volkov ran down to the ring to enter the Rumble at the same time. As both of you were arguing as to who would enter the ring, you popped Volkov and then entered, and he had to wait 2 minutes to enter next. Was this all on purpose to set up a possible upcoming angle between you two? Was it an accident and you just kind of winged it? And I'll tell you what, I can actually show you because I've teed this one up as well in the. There we go.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. I mean,
so the countdown. Actually, I'll skip that. There we go. So we've got 5 seconds left, and you and Nikolai both sort of run down the aisle at the same time.
Who's coming in? Here comes the Rock. Wait a minute, here comes 2 men. I think, who's supposed to be legal here?
No, is this Cleveland?
It was the first Rumble, so January 88.
Oh, January.
Yeah. So was that? Oops, I need to turn it off now. So
must have been set up. Must have been set up to be like that. I can't see Nikolai running down, without being invited or told to go.
Yeah.
I was in my say goodbye blue, so
it was quite
out
like
the door blue.
I will ask this actually. Do you remember the original? Like it was almost like a dry run of the Royal Rumble a few months earlier at a house show. Do you remember that at all, or not so much?
No.
Okay, we'll leave that then. And this is the very final question. Oh, it's Ibzan. Ibzan. Did Randy Savage really lock Miss Elizabeth in closets?
I don't know about closets. They had dressing room spaces and rooms and stuff. Yeah, he would lock the door. I don't know if he did it every time. I never tried to get in, but I heard he locked the doors. I imagine he did. That would seem to be pretty much the. I didn't follow him around to see if he did or not, but
that was that the word in the back at the time that he was locking the doors.
Yeah, it was kind of people weren't that much involved. That didn't care that much like the fans do now. That she was locked in a room and and didn't really care. We figured it didn't think of it as I didn't really think of it, to begin with, but didn't think of it as probably just as a protective thing. Somebody doesn't walk in by accident and she's dressing, or maybe she doesn't have her clothes, the right clothes on, or that's the only thing. Currently, nobody really assumed she was being held captive, or being against her will or something. Macho was a little strange and overprotective and stuff, but it's nobody everybody's going different ways. There's a lot of stuff going on in your head at the time to be worried about Elizabeth being locked in a closet, and it wasn't a closet. They had little cubicles and rooms and stuff. So I suppose if she was locked in a closet, guys would have concern. There'd be a few macho. There'd be other macho men, walking around going, "Why are you locking this nice little lady in a closet for?" But I don't, it was never locked in, like these rooms, and like I said, probably so nobody would walk in her while she was changing, or to make him feel good. Guys had more stuff to think about than worrying about Macho Man and Elizabeth. with the Macho Man Elizabeth thing going on, didn't really get elaborate till, Hulk and he and the wife, and they were splitting up. And that was long gone, long after my time, and long into, or, deep into his run there. That, the guys, didn't have time to worry about Macho Man locking Liz in the closet.
Well, I know he lived in a world of paranoia, but if there was anybody in the locker room or in the back who would there be anyone a likely candidate who might want to try and open the door, even though it was forbidden?
I heard one night Hercules. One night it was in a room next to him, and I guess they're getting it on or something. And then Herc said, Herc's listening. Hercules, don't. Listen, Herc's, this is Herc told me the story. And I thought it was hysterical, but
Herc's listening.
Oh, the things that happen.
I'll tell you what then, because you've got to go to
Life
the
on the
dentist,
road.
and we've done an hour here, or pretty much an hour. I'll shut the podcast down so you can get the dental care that you.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I'd rather sit here for another 3 hours and stutter instead, and throw my Alzheimer's into full overload before I get going. All right, aloha.
All right, thank you very much. So it's Instagram, it's the Magnificent Podcast, Don Muraco. You can find it Twitter, Instagram, blah blah blah. We'll shut the podcast down. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Don, once again for entertaining us as only you can.
My wife went back to work, so she's slacking at all the wrestling cards and the dolls, but you'll get them.
You'll get them. Promise. Cheers.
Aloha.